Prime Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise because the Leader of the Opposition stated that the fiscal incentives given to projects of this nature, like casinos, large hotels, special economic, commercial activities like this, that there is no transparency involved. Madam Speaker, this may have been the case a decade ago, where it was totally at the discretion of government to grant fiscal incentives to large investors, large economic projects of this nature. And indeed, we would have seen in our past where sometimes the government would have given up significant revenues, given significant tax breaks, and what we would have gotten would not have amounted to the benefit of the revenues that we gave up. Some would say that this may have even been the case with the bauxite industry. But since then, Madam Speaker, we have engaged in very deep institutional reforms of our fiscal laws. Indeed, we have fiscal rules. But more than that, we have put in place several pieces of legislation that govern how governments can provide fiscal incentives. In fact, we have a piece of legislation called the Large Scale Pioneer Industries Act, which I would like to remind the Leader of the Opposition of, because I'm certain that he would have played a part in debating this bill when it came into effect. And therefore, the Leader of the Opposition is aware that the government is not on a frolic of its own, either by virtue of a minister deciding by himself or collectively by the cabinet to give any special tax break or any special fiscal incentive to any large investor. That is absolutely not the case. Those days are gone. This government is particularly bounded by the law as it relates to how these incentives are given, and they are not done in an opaque fashion. They can be scrutinized, and indeed, they have been scrutinized. They have to be presented to the public. They are not hidden away and secretly done. First, we should also acknowledge, Madam Speaker, that this piece of legislation, like others, including the omnibus legislation regarding certain fiscal incentives to various industries, but this one in particular sets the basis on which fiscal incentives are given industry-wide. So it's not only for a special investor. Once you meet a certain criteria for investment, then this legislation kicks in, and everyone else who meets that criteria gets a similar benefit. Now, of course, some investments may come with certain specific parameters, certain specific requirements, and there is a very limited rule as to what the government can do. Indeed, the member may very well know of one particular large investment in Harmony Co., which took us a very long time to settle on these matters, primarily Madam Speaker, because we wanted to ensure that there was fiscal coherence, that what one investor got would not put all other investors at a disadvantage. And we have been very scrupulous in this regard. So I want the country to be assured that there is no frolic of giving away the country's tax revenues and other fiscal incentives. There's absolutely no recklessness on our part in that regard.
Leader of the opposition, please state what is your point of order.
Yes, sir. On a point of order, the Prime Minister, I think, is misleading the House in the sense that my point, which he has not addressed and suggests he is addressing, but he's not, is that the regime that is ultimately agreed for that particular investment is not published. We do not know what it is. So the very one to which he referenced, we do not know what the parameters of that fiscal arrangement are for that project. It has been those parameters have been settled within a system. I'm not saying it's arbitrary. I'm saying there's a system within the government system for doing it. But once it is agreed with them, it ought to come back here, and the light of public disclosure ought to apply to it. And we don't know what it is. So that's exactly the point I'm making, Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I want to be clear that this legislation, the Large Scale Pioneer Industries Act, does not give any shield of secrecy to any incentive that is given. The Parliament can always, if they so choose, require it, ask for it. Of course, if it is a tool that is well used in the Parliament for disclosure. So then to come to say you have no means of knowing is misleading the House. So I want again to reestablish the point that there is no arbitrariness in how these fiscal incentives are granted. The discretion of the government is circumscribed in law, and all the decisions are there for the public to see if they so choose to require it. Now, Madam Speaker, it is not always the practice that every incentive scheme is brought to the House. It's, farmers get a particular incentive scheme, hotels get a particular incentive scheme. They're not all brought to the House, but it would be, impractical almost. But if you want to know, it's not hidden, it's not secret, it's not private. If you have a concern, raise a question. Yes, just raise a question. So, Madam Speaker, the second point that I wish to address is the sufficiency of the regulations. I have heard two things said. Both could be true. One point is that the regulations are sufficiently detailed. And the other point is that they don't deal with certain matters enough. For example, the member from Southeast St. Anne raised the issue of how are children treated with in the regulations. His very words, if I were to paraphrase them, would be the regulations are detailed, but I am not seeing how we deal specifically with children. Now, to be clear, Madam Speaker, the regulations that accompany the principal acts are usually meant to give more detailed framework for how specific things are addressed under the law. So it's a more detailed form of the law. But regulations can't go into every single detail of minutia. They are accompanying documents that form frameworks and guidelines that help to effect the law. There is a particular document.
Sit down, man. Sit down, man.
Member from St. Anne.
Yeah, so
So
the clarification I seek, Madam Speaker, relates to, so Prime Minister, you say the minutia, but we're talking about the protection of children. In the regulations, we talk about this color, we talk about, I'm seeking clarification on why children would be treated as minutia when we have the weight of the ball as the color of the ball is included here. But the protection of the children is a minutia.
Prime Minister.
So what is clear here is that, you know, we all want to make a point. And the Principal Act makes it clear that children are prohibited from gambling. It's in the law already, the Principal Act. So I don't know what else should we be regulating when the law itself makes it absolutely clear. Again, the two things can't work together. It can't be either too detailed and then it's not detailed enough. But you're trying to make your point. Anyway, Madam Speaker, the important point that I want to make from this is I listened keenly to the presentation from the member from Northwest St. Catherine and the member from Eastern Portland, and indeed my friend from Southeast St. Anne. And the concerns raised do reflect concerns that the general public, who may not have sight of the full legislation, the regulations, and the supporting framework, would have. Clearly, you don't want to have children gambling. Clearly, persons who have a problem with gambling, you want to be able to identify them, exclude them, and help them. Clearly, you want to manage how credit is dealt with in the casino. Clearly, you want to ensure that the jobs that are created are jobs where locals have them and benefit. Clearly, you want to ensure that when these new 1,000-room hotels that are being built, that housing accompanies them for the employees. Of course, there are legitimate concerns, but it is not accurate or indeed factual to say that the legislation and the policy of the government does not contemplate or address these things. Now, like every other regulated industry, there is a regulator for casinos. There is the Jamaica Casino Gaming Act, and there is the Casino Gaming Commission. Any casino that will operate in Jamaica will operate under license. And the license will go into the specifics, into the minute details or minutia as to how the casino will actually operate. So yes, we regulate them using the regulations here, but there is another level, which is the license. And there is a framework which guides the actual gaming commission to effect any breach of the provisions in the license. And for example, the framework which will inform the provisions of the license, because, you know, to terminate operations of a casino, it wouldn't only start with a breach of the law or the regulation, but it would start with a breach of the provisions of the license. So, for example, the responsibility of a casino operator. The casino operator has a clear responsibility to minimize gambling-related harm. The Casino Gaming Commission expects the casino operator to be able to demonstrate its commitment to the welfare of its patrons, as stated in its internal controls, which should contemplate at minimum the following: responsible advertising of the casino and of casino gaming in accordance with the minimum internal controls and consistent with the guidelines stipulated below, and with respect to the IRD and the general advertising guidelines appended thereto. So they're going into details now. One that you might be interested in: systems for preventing underage or other vulnerable individuals from participating in any gaming or sports betting at casinos, loitering in the gaming area of a casino, or from gaining access to online, mobile, or in-room gambling opportunities. So they have to put in place mechanisms under their license, which will be scrutinized and policed by the Gaming Commission. So I want to put the House at ease. We did not merely cut and paste best practice legislation from other jurisdictions. It was well thought out. And we need to give. I have confidence in the Gaming Commission and the Ministry of Finance. By the way, this legislation is 10 years or more in the making. So they weren't sitting down, twiddling their thumbs, doing nothing. Yes, it's a long time. And so they have done quite a bit of work to make sure. I'm not saying legislation is perfect, mind you, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that it has sufficiently addressed the concerns, the legitimate concerns about how casinos operate. My final point is that it is not the intention of the government of Jamaica to make Jamaica a casino gambling destination. That's not what we're trying to do here. No. So these are not going to be standalone casino where the only activity is gambling and you can walk off the street and just go inside here. No, that's not what we're doing. What we're doing is using the concept of the integrated resort, where within that integrated resort, you can have different products that attract people. So if casino is not your fun today, you go on the beach. If the beach is not your fun today, then you can go and do some tours somewhere else. And what we are going to be doing is to broaden the offering of our tourism product to include things like theater and the performing arts, so that we don't just bring in an entertainer to entertain the guests, at night. We need to be putting on local plays that are of the standard of Broadway, that you can come to our country to see performances. That is the kind of investment, and that's where we're thinking, which is why we're going to be building a performing arts institution in St. James, in Montego Bay, to support the development of that. So yes, you will have casino as one, we'll have theatre as one. We're looking to, and we have started to work on an oceanarium for Jamaica, to be another major attraction. That's the concept. So I want to put Jamaicans at ease that we're not looking to have standalone casinos where you come and gamble and, you know, all the maladies that come with that. That's not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is to expand the offering of our tourism product, and therefore casino will be integrated into the tourism product. And it will not be just open for, Jamaicans to walk off the road and into a casino and get caught in anything other than the entertainment value of gaming. And that's the objective of the policy. So, Madam Speaker, and Jamaicans listening, I hope my presentation would have elucidated some of these matters.
Thanks, Prime Minister. Next, the member from Westmoreland Eastern.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wondered for a second. Well, first, I really just want to support the presentation that was made by the member from Northwest St. Catherine. I wondered for a second whether or not persons in the House